Imagine a reality where even the least performing personal training spot rakes in over $1 million, and the leading ones, they're banking close to $3 million. It's not just numbers, it's really a mindset shift. My guest today, he doesn't just dream it, he's living it, breathing it, harnessing the power of Dunbar's Law. He's streamlined the game, ensuring peak performance meets unparalleled customer service. In his universe, it's about driving efficiency while making a monumental impact. His tactics, they've reshaped his enterprise, completely flipping the script on what it means to be a titan in the fitness industry. As he built his illustrious empire, he paved a way that you can follow too. And beyond that, he's crafted a tool, yours to use at no cost, that lets you earn extra just by recommending the fitness supplements and gear you already swear by. So tune in, join us, unlock your potential, and dive into a world of possibilities. Curtis, welcome. Thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start off because you have a pretty good history on what you've been doing over the past several years. I thought it was pretty neat that when you started, you were in school. And I think this is good. I have a boy that's in college. So, this is good for him to listen to. And I think any college students, because this was not something that I did. But when you were in college, you took a school loan out and went out and bought a few homes. Is that right? Did I do my research correctly on that one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was lucky enough that I was relatively skilled at athletics and academics. So that combined with the fact that I worked full time, I could qualify. My school was paid for through scholarships, and then I could qualify for student loans. And so, at 20 years old, I had a couple of buddies that didn't go to university, and we said, "Hey, what if we bought a house?" That was the first one. Bought a house and they lived in it. I lived at home, went to school. They didn't go to school, and it was my place. And so, what I did is I qualified for a student loan. I took $10,000, put on a down payment on a house, and my three buddies from high school rented it out and lived in it while I lived at home and went to school. So it was that was my start of, I guess not the start of my entrepreneurial journey, but it was definitely a great decision when you look back.
Were you cash flowing on it when you first started? Or were your buddies like, hey man, I can't make the payment this month. Can you give me some slack?
It was a classic movie. Like you'd go up and you'd show up and it'd be like three college kids, not in college, living in this place. And they had like Katie and maybe some ketchup and mustard in the fridge and a can of tuna. And that's pretty much it. Like they were more worried about the big screen TV than they were about paying the electric bill.
Yeah. So you had a true Will Ferrell living there, running old school.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
As long as he wasn't going streaking, I think we're okay.
Exactly. That probably happened too.
So yeah, I thought that was, pretty cool how you got started because you got into this, you created an asset, something of value, and then you turned that around several years later, used that. Plus, I think you said at some point you had a couple other homes that you purchased or had something. And it might stay, cut me off and correct me if I'm wrong about that. Yeah. But you did that. Then you leveraged your houses to get a loan in 2005, or not a loan, but a line of credit in 2005 to go ahead and then buy into what is now Innovative Fitness. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And at the time you were buying one location of three. You were kind of partnering with a group, and then you bought them out.
Yeah.
And that was 2005. And you've just continued this journey. Here we are, 2023. You've got 16 live, active, brick and mortar locations. You've done online training. You've built an app that we're going to talk about a little bit. You've done all these things, and now you're, scheduled to grow to 23 locations over the next year. And each unit is doing 1.1 to 1.3 million. I mean, you've been crushing it nonstop. And you've started this all started with a house, with ketchup and mustard in a refrigerator, with a place that you didn't even live at. So I want to talk about how you kind of did all these things, because the reality is there's so many opportunities out there. And I remember being in college and I got a master's in exercise physiology. I remember going through this thought process in my mind. it's a safe option, right? I'm getting a degree. I know that I can go out and get a job, and, there's some protection there. But I also knew that getting out of school, I was going to make any around for 40 to 50,000 a year, right? With that degree. And it wasn't really going to provide a whole lot. I had a kid in college. So as I'm going through this process, I'm like, oh shit, how am I going to afford real life? And I remember this. I don't know if you know if Aldi's in Canada, but there's these Aldi stores. They started out in Europe. And I saw a posting in the hallway saying Aldi general manager, 60,000 a year. I'm like, boom, I'm going to do that because that's more money than what my degree can get me. So how can someone go through this process safely? Because you have a lot of these guys who own gyms, or and a lot of it's not just unit economics, but it's also like how you position yourself and the knowledge and expertise you have. How can someone kind of get into a similar situation that you're in? How can they go open a PT studio, brick and mortar, and do well with it? What are the top 3 things you could give advice on?
Well, I think maybe it makes a lot of sense to, share my mindset going into this. Like, I was 19 years old. I was, an athlete. Obviously I excelled in academics as well. Like I mentioned, got a scholarship, and I looked at what I wanted to do in life. And I had the ambitions to, go to university, get a kinesiology degree, and then go into med school. Like that was my goal when I started university. And then what quickly shifted is I realized that it wasn't going to be med school, but it'd be probably physiotherapy or chiropractic. And as I evaluated that during university, I realized that not only would I have a 4-year degree and then another 2 years after that, but coming after all of that schooling and education, I'd get a job of $40,000 to $60,000. And I didn't see the return. Now, I'm not suggesting that post-secondary education and, some further education like going to physio or chiropractic school wouldn't be beneficial. But I did the math and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was working full time. So I was on our Olympic and national water polo team at the same time, working full time while going to school full time. So I had a full course load. I worked 35 hours a week. I was managing a sports complex. I was making, like, at the same time I was going to school, I was already making $50,000. I think 55. And it really didn't make sense to me. So, as I finished off my degree in kinesiology, I was like, okay, I'm not going to go to school. And if maybe I will eventually, but I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go and cut my teeth and get more experience in the industry. And what I thought was going to be a stepping stone in my career, I literally am like, I'm going to apply my education. I'm going to start training people. I'm going to talk about and, apply it through programming and customer service and training and mechanics.
Natural next step. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And if I did it for 2 years and it would open up a gateway of other things, or if I did it for 2 years and I realized, hey, the next evolution is maybe going back to physio school or chiropractic school, I would do that. And, when I started training people in my last semester of university, I realized, like, you know what? Like, this is, a pretty good gig. You're surrounded by phenomenal entrepreneurs, because the people 20 years ago that could afford personal training, it was like having a maid or a chef in your, in your kitchen. It was pretty selective. Like, it wasn't as mainstream as it was today. So I remember surrounding myself with, the founders of Lululemon and the founders of, in Canada and Earl's. This is a restaurant chain. And I was getting so much value providing them with health and wellness services, as much as they were providing me with insights about entrepreneurship and life and, the journey with being married and having kids. And then at 23, the 2 partners and founders of Innovative, they came up to me and they're like, we're going to lose you. And they were 11 years my senior. So I was 23, they were 33, 34. And
they were going to lose you because they knew you were going to leave, or they were going to lose you because they knew you were too good. And at some point you were
probably both. But like, they knew that I had ambitions. It's funny. I write a newsletter called Healthy Ambitions. I had healthy ambitions to do a lot of things in life, and they said, hey, listen, instead of losing you, would you want to, commit and buy in? And at the time I bought my first house at 19, and, here I am sitting on an asset. And I remember at 23 years old, I wasn't living at home at the time. And I walked into my parents' house and I said, I'm buying a gym. And I swear to God, my old man, no entrepreneurs in my family, they're like, you're what?
What the hell are you doing? Yeah.
I said, I'm buying a gym. And they're like, you're crazy. I said, hey, no problem. If you don't want to support me, I got other support. Like, I got clientele. I got people that say you got to do it. Yeah. And the mindset of it was, what is worst case scenario? What is worst case scenario? Well, I'll tell you what worst case scenario was. I was 23 years old, took a $447,000 loan. And if I failed, I would have to sell equipment. So let's call equipment cost $100,000 at the time. And so maybe a yard,
you get 10 grand back.
Yeah. 10 grand back. And that I would get a great job and somehow pay that off over the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. That was my worst case scenario. So like 23, like if I'm going to take a risk, I'm going to take it now. I'm not going to wait until I'm married and have kids and you name it. And so I realized that if I wasn't going to do it now, I would probably never do it. And so I took that risk, but I sold my house. What's funny is that I had bought my house when I was 19. Now I'm 23. It's 4 years later. I had, leveled up and I sold everything. Like I sold my house that was producing, some good cash flow. I sold my car. I always had a great car because I was working full time. I didn't have the $500.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I sold everything. And then I moved back with my parents. So I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own business. I have clients that are super successful. I'm going out for dinner with them and then I'm getting in,
feels like you're really stepping forward, doesn't it?
Oh, and then all of a sudden I'm going back and living with my folks. They're like, oh yeah, do you want to go back to your place? I'm like, probably not.
Yeah. Cuddling up with your old blanket from when you were like 10 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I just think, going back to the question of like, I think the reality is that I think we overthink some things sometimes, when we live in the present and we realize that we're probably going to make the best decision for us at any given time. We're not going to intentionally put ourselves in a position of harm, or hurt or failure. Like it's human nature to survive. And so, if we're not ready, we're not ready. And if we are ready, do it. And what's worst case scenario? You're probably going to make some decisions along the way that you're going to learn from. And worst case scenario, you find a way out of it. And I think, so many times we contemplate and we, whether that's procrastination, overthink things, paralysis, and it limits us to the things that we could, should, and want to be doing. And and that's everything. That's not entrepreneurship. That's everything. And so I'm a man of, really pushing myself outside comfort zone. And I'm talking about mentally, physically, emotionally, entrepreneurship, business, and I've had a lot of failures, but I can tell you, I was staying up with my wife last night. We were just talking about, funny enough, the topic of death. I said, if I died tomorrow and got hit by a bus.
Feels good right before you go to sleep, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. But you know what we said? I said, hey, if someone looked at the resume of life,
yeah,
like people are going to be like, check. Hey, yeah. that guy did a lot, and I'm okay with that. So
that's good, man. So what was the I interrupted. What was the conversation? I want to hear this now.
You know what? We just got into this conversation about death. What does that look like? We have 2 kids, 7 and 9, and what do we think about? Do we fear it? Do we accept it? And, a lot of times I like I said last night, I said, hey, if I got hit by a bus, like, have I lived in the now in my present day? Have I done the things I want to do? Have I accomplished a ton? Am I satisfied? Would my kids be proud of the dad that they have? How do I show up in life? Not just with them, but like, what are other people saying about me, in the future? And it's not a need for acceptance. It's more of, am I representing what my kids would want to have as a father? And I think about that all the time. Like one of my biggest motivators to stay fit, active, and healthy and do the things I've done in the last 20 years is, if my kids got up today and they looked at their dad, are they inspired, motivated, and satisfied with the leadership that I provide every single day? Who I am, what I represent, and what I do for my life to live a healthy, meaningful existence. And I'd say yes, and I mean, I can't put words in their mouth, and I hope they think that, but it is a motivator, and for those of people that have kids, life changes a little bit, right? Or a lot. And so, yeah, we just talked about that. And yeah, I mean, I got some scars and war wounds for sure, but 20 years of entrepreneurship and pushing things outside my comfort zone, it's been one hell of a journey. And I hope I can continue that journey for the next 20 or 40. So
what would you say? I mean, I think I easily could have gone on the topic of mindset with you. And I think that's a totally another podcast. We'll have to be back on that for that one. But what are the things that you would say were points or time frames that you went, oh shit, that I'll remember that one. That's one I'm going to learn from, and I'm not going to screw that up again in business. And I'm, because we do this in both, personal and professional life. I know personally there was an instance when I had, I didn't have several hundred trainers yet, but I think I was at like maybe 60 or 70 trainers. And I got dinged with having everybody as a contractor, and they should have been employees. So then I got dinged with a $250,000 tax from the IRS, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, "What the hell is this?" But it was because the decisions that I was taking, they weren't well thought through, and I didn't come from a background of business, and I had no mentors to kind of guide me in that process when I first started. Nor was I looking for mentorship. I was not asking people who actually had been through business. A big, I think, failed mistake is certainly something that I've learned from. So what are those things for you? What are 3 things that you could probably go, yep, that one, and that one, that I would tell anyone who's going to open up a PT studio or a private gym?
Yeah, well, the first one that comes to mind would be probably the loss of one of the more impactful teammates and trainers that we had. I for sure didn't handle it as good as I should have. Like it was, I basically, I hung on to it. Like I had to control the process. I had put years, like 6-7 years of development and growth. And we had formed a meaningful relationship, as a friendship. And I felt like they were a confidant and someone that I could rely on as not only a teammate, but a friend. And when it was their time to move on, I didn't celebrate it the way that I should have. And what happened was it backfired. They had built meaningful relationships themselves. I tried to take credit for that instead of just allowing them to realize that, hey, they're the ones that put in the work. They put in the time. They invested time, energy, effort, resources into those relationships. And although they were clients of Innovative Fitness, they were friends of this individual trainer. And I wanted to control that process and that narrative, and felt like I had some level of authority over top of that relationship, multiple relationships. And I think if I look back, I would probably have for sure, I would have handled that differently. I would have recognized, that individually different. I would have supported their next step and tenureship, and their career path. And I think the outcome would have been, I think a lot more people would have been supportive and rallied behind the bigger purpose and cause and the overall representation of the brand. It was a big learning point for me, and when you lose teammates and trainers after 3 or 6 months, they haven't developed meaningful relationships with your clientele yet, it's not as impactful. But when you lose a critical key component or an individual that has helped you build the brand itself, and you don't honor that, even if, they behave differently or they're disappointing you, regardless, you have to see through that. And I think I probably could have handled it better because we lost some clients through that process, and not because there was arguments or, a lot of friction. It was just because I think we didn't honor the commitment, the relationships that existed, and we tried to take credit for that. So I think that would be one of the biggest ones.
Okay. So I've had trainers leave, and I think anybody has a business right now where you have coaches on your team and you have people leave. A lot of times they try and go out and do their own thing. And I also feel that if it's, to your point, if it's not spoken of in a way where they feel honored or they feel good about it, then they keep it quiet. And it's kind of like everything's silenced on their approach to go through their next career step. And because of that, it starts to create tension, and you can recognize that tension in the relationship. And then when they do make the move, it's like, hey, I'm leaving, and it's, you're not doing anything about it. And I'm taking all my clients and you can't do anything. Right. So, and then it can even turn into a legal battle. I've had issues where there's been times where there was a legal battle because I was so focused on the fact that no, these are customers of my business. They're staying here. You can't keep anybody in your business. It's not worth it. You're just going to piss people off. So I think that's so valuable that you're sharing that, especially 6 years into it and with someone that, was pretty close to you. What's another one that you probably, we'll do one more here. I know I said 3, but let's do one more.
Yeah. I think one, the other one that comes to mind is that when you have a level of success, and I wouldn't say things come easy, but when you've had success and you prove things out, you slip on due diligence, you slip on, execution. And what I mean by that is you take for granted all the little things you did the first time. So the first time when you first open up a studio, you're analyzing foot traffic, you're analyzing demographic, you're doing, all your research, you're negotiating the lease, with a fine tooth comb, you're doing all of the little things that you would think that you need to do to set yourself up for success. And then time goes on and you forget, and you probably take for granted all those small little things that really you did the first time. And I'm not saying you give it up the second time or the third time, but by the time you're on number 5 or 6, there's a level of confidence that you think it. You're making some assumptions, you're cutting corners a little bit. And, we transitioned and took over a location, and we didn't think it through. We did not think through the transition as much as we should have. And it backfired. We took for granted the clientele and the loyalty the clientele had to the existing owner. We took for granted that there was, all these teammates and staff that, for 6, 7, 8 years, looked upon the owner as almost their second father. And even though there was no, intent, to harm the business, like the previous owner, that is, or, to compete because they didn't go back in the industry. It was the fact of that absenteeism that existed after we took over caused a lot of churn, and erosion, and not because we weren't great operators, not because we were, we didn't have experience, but it was just relationships that we took for granted. And I look back and I said, would I have made the same decisions if this was my first location? Probably not. Like, I probably would have done a lot more due diligence. I would have done a lot more planning. I would have done all these things that I put in early on my career, and I took for granted all that stuff.
What's something you would have changed in that scenario? Because I know of someone who recently purchased a location, and they still have the prior operator that's still there. What would you have done differently? Would you have had or required the previous operator to be part of that transition, be involved, be there maybe for a couple years or a year? How would you have gone about it?
What I would have done differently is I would have had some accountability measures in terms of ensuring that the performance of the business would have to hit certain milestones, for 6 months to 2 years after the fact. And not that they have to be in the business operating it, but they'd be there to support the business. Like there was no accountability to ensure that the success that was created was maintained after we took over. And so that I think, if you look at those types of key negotiation, terms in the contract, I think we would have looked at that for sure.
Are you still franchising locations?
Yep. Yeah, we are.
So I asked that question because there was a guy that had said this to me, and whether he's right or wrong, he's probably more wrong than right. But he would always tell me, "You've forgotten more than what I know," and I think that's very true about operators, especially yourself. You've been operating for such a long time. There's a lot of nuances and details that you've done so many times that you may not know how to express it or formally put it into a SOP, or it's, part of a systematic process, but it's there in your brain. And when you go through the next step of getting a new location, or just the way that maybe you talk with customers or you talk with your coaches or the way that you motivate them, some of those things are natural and they're in you because you've done it so many times. You can do it in your sleep. That, I think, is the value of becoming a franchisee. I think if you're franchising, that is where the value comes in, because there's so much information that the other person probably does not know and won't know unless they go through those steps. So what can we talk about your franchise for a second?
For sure.
Is it just in Canada or all North America, or where are you expanding out to?
Canada for right now. We've already been approved in some states. So state of Washington and California. So we have disclosure documentation that's already completed for those two states. And we, in 2019, we were getting ready. Actually, we had a location earmarked in Seattle. We had one in California and possibly one in New York. So, I think that just went on pause because of the pandemic. And now that we're, post pandemic, we're literally picking up our bags right now. And we've had some inbound inquiries around our franchise, solutions and opportunities just in the last, weeks and months. So yeah, we're right now currently in Canada, span from essentially Vancouver to Toronto. And we're looking at all opportunities right now in North America.
And what is the cost of a franchise? I know a lot of franchise groups, they sell them in packs of 3, or, they try and get as many locations out as possible. What does it look like if I were a franchisee? What do I have to come up with, and how much do I have to pay into it?
Yeah. So our franchise fee is $70,000, which goes everything from, the brand itself, site location, the full build out support, like everything, essentially from initial interest all the way to, on-site training when you open up. That is the franchise fee. And then the franchise itself costs, it ranges now depending on state and location, from a build out perspective, but it can range anywhere between, I'd say 700 to 1.1 in terms of construction costs. That's generally speaking. 20 years ago it was about 450 to 500. Obviously that's increased just based on, cost of construction these days compared to where it was 20 years ago. But yeah, anywhere between 750 and 1.1 is generally speaking. And the range can vary based on, just overall construction costs in that region, all the way to, size of space, what the, washroom facilities or the front desk area look like, because that's the highest cost that we put into our development of our locations. And so all of those are factors. And that would be turnkey. Like that's getting you a fully operated, sign on the door and, and equipment in the gym. So yeah, that's approximate cost.
And any royalty fees?
Yeah. So it's a 6% royalty plus a 1% ad fund and marketing fund contribution. So 7% total.
Okay. So if for the listeners out there, that's Innovative Fitness, and you got to go take a look at it, because it's a luxury premium brand. So if you're thinking like, 700, to $1 million to do a build out. First of all, you're likely, if you're working with Curtis and their team, there's probably some opportunity to go ahead and get some TI, tenant improvement allowance, from the landlords. So that way you're not coming up with that entire full upfront cost. But more importantly, this is a premium brand. There's a reason why they do so well. They know their model, they know their market, and they know the people that are buying. So they're doing all that upfront work for you. I'm not trying to sell this on you, but I've been in the game for a little while. And I think if I had something like this when I first started, and I had the mentorship, I had the franchise group to go to, I probably wouldn't have had those hard-learned lessons that I had over the years. So if you're in the market, definitely take a look at it. So I also want to talk a little bit about the franchise unit economics a little bit, since we're on franchising. Most of the units are doing anywhere from 1.1 to 1.3 a year, 1.1 to 1.3 million a year, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I look at it, pre-COVID, we had 12 locations and divided into, 3, it was like 4, 4, and 4. We had 4 locations that were relatively new. Like when I say new, within 3 to 4 years old. We had 4 that had been in market 7 to 8 years, essentially. And then we had 4 that had been predominantly like our flagship locations that have been in the market for 20 years. And, obviously the more mature locations, most of them were higher revenue than the newer ones, especially the medium ones. And we had locations pre-pandemic, one location doing 2.1 million, two locations doing between 1.7 and 1.8, another location doing 1.5, and then the bulk of it anywhere between 1 and 1.4. So, most locations within about 2.5 to 3 years surpass that $1 million mark, give or take, that there's no like headwinds like a pandemic. But yeah, I mean, I'd say the average right now is between 1.3 and 1.4.
Okay. And then the size is, are you still doing 4,000 to 5,000 square foot units?
Yeah. Yeah. It's about 4,500 to 5,000 usually. Okay.
And still one-on-one training or 2-on-1 training. I know some of the locations that it indicates that it's like a private gym. So I'm assuming at some point in time, like if you're a training client, this is my assumption, that you also have the ability to go ahead and use the gym.
Yeah, exactly. So 98% of our revenue is private and semi-private training. So 1-on-1 and 2-on-1.
Okay. And can I ask how much you pay your coaches?
Yeah. So our economics, it depends on region. So our average location, whoa, sorry about that.
No worries. Our average, if you need to grab water or something, I mean, I can always cut, and because we're going to edit this anyway.
Let's try that. Our average location, give or take, does anywhere between $90 to $110 an hour. In terms of that's the cost for services. Okay. And our average trainer ranges between 25 and 40. Now, when I say that, that's their hourly wage.
Yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't include all the health benefit, health
insurance. Yeah.
Insurance benefits, items like that. So give or take, a $40 an hour employee costs us, probably in the ballpark of 60 after you factor in all that. So it's 25 to 40, and it ranges based on experience, education, tenure with the brand, a variety of different things, leadership. And then we have a studio manager or, studio leader in every location, and they're a salaried employee, and that employee makes anywhere between 80 and 110.
Okay. So, and then what is your cost per square foot typically?
That can vary significantly.
Depends. Yeah.
So we have locations that, net $25 a foot all the way to, we have some locations that are 45, but give or take, our average lease is, depending on size, of course, ranges between $12,000 and $15,000 a month.
Okay. So that was probably my biggest mistake, was the rent when I first started opening gyms. I did not know where we needed to be, and my measurements, my performa was off. So I got into leases that were pretty heavy. Needless to say, going back into what you're talking about as far as like 1-on-1 and 2-on-1, there's a lot of clubs that are doing group, or I should say more semi-private, right? It's not big group classes. They're not doing, 15, 20 people in a class. They're truly doing more of a semi-private model to maybe 6 people in a group. Is that something you consider? Is that something you ever go down, or you're like, this is our model. This is how we work?
No, I think the semi-private model, 3, 4, 5-on-1 is actually a really good model. The reality is that technology hasn't kept up with the ability to do that well. Just now, like literally just as we speak, there's some technology options that allow for that functionality to be really smooth, because unless the client or the customer has access to the availability, the booking, and can manage those classes, you can lock classes and you can open classes, meaning, if a group, 5 guys get together and want to train together, you got to lock that class. They don't want, stranger Joe to show up and train with them and wreck the vibe. But then other people need or want to just show up and be part of a group of 5. And so having open, closed, have access to the consumer, the client, like that technology hasn't existed for a long period of time. And so to do that small group well, you have to have the technology to support it, in my opinion.
Is that something you guys would do in the future?
Yeah, we're actually looking at introducing that type of service offering come 2024.
Do you think it's going to? So we were primarily just 1-on-1. We did hour sessions. We were very just basic 1-on-1 training. That's all we did, all in person. And I remember our first run at trying to do like a semi-private or a group model. And it could have just been the way that we rolled it out. I mean, we had several locations that we were in. And, to your point about like, how would you run your first location? I was not there on the ground floor. It was something that we came up with as a team. And then, we had our managers go out and work on this. But I remember we tested it at one location and it killed our 1-on-1 training revenue. Like it didn't, there was no bump. So the thought was we have X percentage of people buying 1-on-1 training. So there's this other group that's not buying training. How do we get them in? And we tried a lot of different things. And I don't know if you have a solution for this, but we were like, all right, well, there's a huge percentage of people that aren't buying training. What can we do for them? And let's start out with doing semi-privates, because maybe it's just a price thing. That's what it sounds like. Everybody says I can't afford it, right? And then they work them on price to try and get someone to close, and they actually can't afford it. So it was, let's do semi-privates. And all it did was just devalue essentially the 1-on-1s. We reduced the amount of revenue we were doing in 1-on-1, increased the amount of revenue on semi-privates, and our coaches were busier than they were previously, in not in a good way. So how do you combat for that? Or how have you kind of worked through that model? Because it clearly works.
Our thesis is the fact that like we believe in this model where it's, I don't know if you've heard the model, same, different, or different, I should say. So basically you want to deliver the same service to a select group of people, the same people. And then what people do is they make a mistake and they say, I'm going to provide a different service to the same group of people too early. So what we do is we look at it going same, and then same, different, meaning we're providing same service to same people. And then the next step is deliver the same service to a different group of people. And then the next step is to deliver a different service to the same people. And then finally, a different service to different people. And I think what we find is that if you jump, that is the stepping stone. So if you jump too early and you provide a different service to different people, because you're like, what I heard you say is like, hey, we're going to offer a different service to a different type of clientele in hopes that we're going to get more business. And it totally disrupted the system. And so for us, it's like, we delivered the same service to the same people. we've delivered the same service to different people. We open up our addressable market, different clientele, type of clientele. And now it's time for us to deliver a different service to the same type of clientele. And what I'm saying by that is it's not because we're trying to get a different clientele. We're actually delivering, we're same, different, same. We're delivering a different service to the similar clientele. We're not doing it for a pricing reason. We're doing it for a community reason. We're doing it for connection. We're doing it for, they could afford one-on-one, but now they want it because they can actually work out with their friends, or they can work out with their, we're doing it for a different reason, but the same clientele. And, I think that's going to make a difference. Because then what happens is that you're going to get some clientele that just wants the one-on-one experience. They have hip issues. They have knee issues. They just want the, one-on-one experience. They don't want to be in a group. They don't want that. They don't want to be in a group. Yeah. And they don't want to manage a schedule in the group. Right. Yeah. And then there's another group that they're there not because they can't afford one-on-one, but they're there because they want to go and be with their friends and then go for coffee after. And so I think, that's how we're thinking about it. And if we think about it, that we're not trying to attract different people, we're attracting the same people just for different reasons. And so, I think if our thesis and assumptions right, then I don't think it's going to jeopardize our premium, personalized approach or our revenue attached to the private or the semi-private services.
Do you think it'll affect the spacing in the location, right? Because let's say you got 6 trainers on the floor with 6 clients, it's 12 people. And then you got 2 or 3 other trainers that are doing these, small groups. Everybody's trying to get on equipment, or everybody's trying to move around each other. Do you think that's going to pose an issue?
I think it's the biggest risk in some of our locations. So we're evaluating that right now, based on location, does this make sense? If so, which ones? Because there is some locations that, because they're just older locations, they're smaller, they're 3,500 square feet or 4,000 square feet. Do we have the capacity to do, run a service like this? But definitely throughout certain times of the day, right? It's not all the busy times, 6, 7, 8 in the morning. Yeah. 11, 12, 1 o'clock.
Yeah. So I had this, what I call MPR ratio. It's my member to PT revenue ratio when I was doing this for clubs. And I knew that 10 new clients meant that I was going to bring it, 10 new gym members was going to bring in a lifetime value of about $6,000 for PT revenue, because I knew that 10 new gym members, we were riding the coattails. 85% we're going to book on an appointment. 65% we're going to show. 45% we're going to close at around $400 a month. And then, so we knew that essentially 2.5 people of every 10 would buy at $400 a month, and they were going to be clients for around 6 months. Do you have anything like that? That was my metric, an MPR ratio. Do you guys have something similar? If you run a campaign, or that just because you guys exist there, that X number of people are going to sign up when you open a location?
We have a lot of those, maybe not specifically exactly what you just outlined. I actually broke it down with our management team the other day. How our business works is actually quite simple. 150 clients at 2 times a week drives 300 hours per week in weekly sessions, which drives about 1.4 million in revenue. And so, if you think about it that simple, if you can get to the magic number of 150 clients coming to 2 times a week, and our average client is with us 2.2 times a week and spends on average $800 a month, $840. And
how long are they with you? 6 months, is that about the same?
No, before COVID, our average, take out some of the outliers, both the top end and the low end, our average client before COVID had spent 6.2 years in our business.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
So we had outliers that were 15, 16, 18, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And then obviously we have the three free sessions, got it at a silent auction item, right, and come in and not our clientele. But yeah, our average clientele stays with us longer than 2 years.
Wow. That's
so
huge.
At $840 a month, the net contribution, like our lifetime value is well over $6,000 per client. And so we look at that and really honor that on what we can do to recognize, let alone acquire our customers. And although most of our customers are acquired through word of mouth, it's really important to us, our management team, our leadership, to understand like the value of our customer and how we can, nurture and recognize those customers along the way, because we have some phenomenal clients and we wouldn't be in business without them. Yeah. On the flip side, we have to understand our metrics so that, really how to run a successful business is it's actually quite simple in our industry. It's, 150 clients. It's actually Dunbar's law. So I don't know how much you know about Dunbar's law, but
no, this is, give me this. I'm going to steal it from you.
So Dunbar's law, suggests that it's natural that you can only actually have an interaction and meaningful relationships with up to 150 people. So when you have 150 people outside of that, it's really hard to know their name, know what they're doing, and really have any level of engagement with them. Now, it doesn't mean that you have like high, deep level engagement with number 149, but they say that Dunbar's law suggests that, at about 150, you kind of max out your capacity to actually manage and have any level of meaningful relationship with someone. And so what's unique is that when you open up a boutique studio, if you follow that principle, it actually works out really well, because 150 people at 2 times a week at 300 sessions per week, 1,200 sessions per month, equates to about 1.3, 1.4 million in revenue, even with some, flexibility on client travel and not full capacity at all times. And that's a good business. So I think we overthink that we have to go and get, 10,000 clients to open up a premium personal training studio. No, like go find a suburb, that's located in an affluent area that doesn't have any competing, boutique gyms in the area or personal training. Go open up, and I can guarantee you, as long as you're about 2.5, miles, as a radius around your gym for where people either work or live or both, you got a good chance of doing a really good business. And so a lot of people think they have to be in downtown New York, downtown LA, downtown Toronto, where the costs of your lease costs are 4 times as much as a suburb location. You got to look at those little affluent pockets where people reside in that are, 1 to 2 miles away, from where they live. Hopefully they can work from there. Well, now in today's world, there's a lot of remote work, and find those little pockets that, you can attract 150 people, and that's all you need.
What, do you have your most profitable location in a suburb?
Yep.
Nice.
It's not downtown Vancouver. It's not downtown Toronto. It's not the one that has all the street frontage. It's like B+ locations. We think that we need an A+ location to run a great fitness business. If you want to subscribe to the fads and the trends and be the next cool, hip place that, all the social influencers go to and show it on Instagram, awesome. And it might look great, but the books won't look better.
Hope it makes money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Won't be there long enough for Instagram to grab onto it.
Well, and there's a new thing that shows up,
every day,
2 years later. Right. And I
think that's a good point that you make, because I remember opening one of my first locations. Facebook was like so new, right? Nobody was on social media. And if they were, it was because they were in college and they were looking to hook up. So now you look at it, it's not about having signage and having that visibility, how many cars pass by, how many people pass by. It's, can you be visible online? Can people see you and find you online? And if they can, they will just say, get the directions, they'll drive to you, or they'll text or call you, or do a meeting like this over video.
Yeah.
Is that how you guys are marketing? You have something
Yeah,
planned for January?
Like I say, most of our business comes from word of mouth, so we don't even have to worry about that necessarily. But yeah, I mean, make sure that we show up on Google search. When someone's searching, personal training in X area, that you show up in the top 5. That helps out a ton. And then there's name recognition, obviously, on top of that. But if you don't have to be, have massive street frontage. It's a destination. And so as long as you're within, drivable distance, let's say, a 10-minute drive to and from their office or to and from their house, like that's the magic sauce right there.
Awesome. I want to talk about workout because we're cutting short on time, and I know that you are a busy man and you've probably got other things to do other than sit here and talk to me. So, workout is your baby, right? You had this idea of how do you create a solution, and from what I understand, even from our last conversation, the workout app, WRKOUT, was initially something that you created because there was a gap in the way that tools function for coaches like us, for personal trainers and businesses like ours. And then all of a sudden COVID happened and it shifted how you were using it. It became a video tool to do virtual training. And then it shifted again. You pivoted again to make workout, which I think was awesome the way that you did this. It is really the tool where coaches can go ahead and, because they're doing it anyway, let people know about what supplements or what tools they're using, and they can get paid for this. So how does that work, and how many different products can I personally, there's Optimum Nutrition. It's not something that I recommend to everyone, but I think for the most part, good quality product. It's in the mid range, and it has, it's not too costly. So most customers will be able to afford it, and they'll have no problem buying it. And I'll tell people that, but I don't get paid for it. So how does this work for you? Like, how does it work? I have it downloaded on my phone. How do I make this work for me?
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, workout itself, what it was 3 years ago is not what it is today. And we're actually really excited about how it's evolved, and it evolved through adapting to the market needs, the conditions, and obviously what the user was looking for. Right now, Workout is a recommendation platform. So we partner with all the leading industry brands and products, and make it available for trainers, coaches, nutritionists, physiotherapists, chiropractors, and wellness experts to recommend brands and products they already love and trust, and earn rewards from that recommendation. So right now, what happens is the only people that actually get the brand deals that are worthwhile are people that have some level of social influence. So they have, 200,000 followers on Instagram as an example, and they're going to get the social influencer deal from these brands and get paid for, obviously, jumping up and down on Instagram to get rewards. Yet the people that are making recommendations all day long are the ones that have meaningful relationships, that built the trust with the clients day in and day out, and are getting asked all the time, what should I eat? What supplements should I buy? What equipment do I need when I'm on the road? And what we do as a health expert or a wellness expert is we send them down the street to go buy supplements at a supplement store or go buy equipment at a fitness retailer. And so we've now made it easy for trainers and wellness experts to recommend the products that they love and trust and get rewarded for that. And so we've partnered with a ton of the leading brands. So Thorne Supplements, Optimum Nutrition, Vega, Garden of Life, Pure Encapsulations, Zymogen, a ton of great supplements. And then on the flip side, a ton of, of the leading industry products. So TRX, Hyperice, Normatec, and we have over 1,000 SKUs. We have over 70 brand partners, and you basically can download the app. It's called Store by Workout, WRKOUT. So from the App Store, Android or Apple, and download it. It's free. And you essentially link up your bank account info, just like you would with Stripe. and you can start making recommendations, and you can populate recommendation links to embed in platforms like, any kind of leading industry engagement platforms, technology, nutrition platforms, you name it. However you manage your clients' programs, you can embed those links into those programs, or you can text it, email, put it in social media, wherever. And when your client buys a product or products like a bundle, then you get rewarded, and you get rewarded anywhere between 10 and 18% commission.
Can you
and
bundle?
So, pardon me?
You can bundle on it, or is it one product?
Oh yeah, you can bundle. That's a beautiful thing. So unlike affiliate deals or social influencer deals, where you're representing one brand and a product line, I could bundle a TRX, a High Price, a Normatec, a Garden of Life, and Thorne supplements all in one bundle, and say, here's my onboarding package. And every single time a client buys, you're making between 10 and 15%. We're putting the power of recommendations in the back pocket of wellness experts, and we're going to be turning boutique studios into wellness retailers. Like, we believe that boutique studios don't sell products because of multiple things. They don't have area for inventory. They don't want to take the risk of inventory. They don't have the cash to support, enough of the inventory that they want to have. And there's no way they can have the wide variety of selection. And so, can you imagine if we can now put an iPad at your POS, and clients and or the trainer can create bundles of all the leading industry brands and products, and you're making between 15 and 18% margin on any products that are sold, but you don't have to have the inventory. Like, it's awesome. It's the future of e-commerce. Like, it's drop shipping, fulfillment, by the brands, and there's no risk. Zero risk for the trainer, zero risk for the, there's absolutely zero risk for the trainer, and zero risk for the boutique studio owner, like absolutely zero. So it's, it's an option. It's an opportunity for people to really leverage and earn rewards or earn money on the recommendations they're already making.
I foresee a kiosk with a nice large iPad, in some retail area of the studio, and you have recommendations by different coaches. So if you want to see a coach, you click that coach's name, and then there are the recommendations based on programming or based on type or desired outcome. So that way you can just click it, done, order, shipped. I love it. That's, yep. I don't know what you're doing with it. I'm sure it's probably way better than my 2-second idea.
No, it's exactly right. Like, exactly right.
Great. So if you're listening, if you haven't had a chance to listen to the whole episode and you kind of caught up here at the end, be sure to take a look at what Curtis is doing with his studios, his gyms. Get involved in franchising. At least, understand the concept on how you're going to get maximum value and benefit out of learning from someone who's already done it several times over for several years. And then take a look at workout, because there's nothing that you have to do. I mean, that's a free money maker if you're looking to make a little extra cash off of things you're already recommending to your customers. Curtis, where can they find you? Where can they link up if they're looking to get involved in franchising, or they're looking to partner up? If it's a nutrition group, because there's a couple nutrition companies that I've had on here, they might want to be a vendor. How do they do it?
Easiest way is check out my website, personal website, CurtisChristopherson.com. That's CNC. So CurtisChristopherson.com. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Send me a DM. Mention that you heard me on this podcast, and I'll connect with you right away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Curtis. Till next time, everybody, I will see you on the flip side.